Imagine waking up every morning to a view so quiet, you could hear the wind brushing over the hills. No honking cars. No flashing paparazzi cameras. Just the soft, rolling green of the English countryside stretching as far as the eye can see. The kind of place where the loudest sound you hear all day might be the kettle boiling or a bird tapping at the window. That was Johnny Depp's life in the Cotswolds. And for years, it was everything he needed. After years of relentless Hollywood attention, endless headlines, and courtroom battles that seemed to be broadcast to the entire planet, he found himself here, in a village where people waved hello because they knew you as Johnny from down the road, not Johnny Depp, the movie star. It wasn't about fame anymore. It was about peace. The Cotswolds isn't just a random countryside. It's a postcard brought to life. Old honey-colored stone cottages that have stood for centuries, little winding lanes that lead to secret gardens, and pubs where the fireplace is always crackling and the locals are more interested in the weather than the latest celebrity gossip. It's the kind of place where people know when the postman's on holiday and which neighbor bakes the best scones. For Johnny, it was the perfect hideaway. A place to heal. When he first moved there, it wasn't for the luxury or the scenery, though both were definitely part of the appeal. It was for the stillness. The chance to breathe. To put the noise of the outside world on mute and focus on, just being. People who saw him around say he was approachable. He'd pop into the local pub for a drink. He'd chat with the shopkeepers. He wasn't walking around with an entourage or wearing sunglasses indoors. He was living like a man who had stepped away from the storm. But now, that chapter is closing. The news broke quietly at first. Whispers from locals who noticed he wasn't around as much. Fans who used to spot him at certain favorite spots realizing months had passed without a sighting. And then, confirmation, Johnny Depp is leaving the Cotswolds. To the casual observer, it might just seem like another celebrity changing homes. But for people who know how much this place meant to him, it's not that simple. The first theory, and maybe the most obvious one, is work. Johnny's schedule is filling up again. His music with Hollywood vampires is pulling him back onto the stage, city after city, country after country. And now that he's starting to return to bigger film roles, that means months of filming in faraway locations. The Cotswolds, as beautiful and peaceful as it is, isn't exactly close to Hollywood sets or international airports. For someone whose career is suddenly surging again, that kind of distance can make life complicated. But there's another theory. And it's more personal. Friends close to Johnny say the Cotswolds was never just a house. It was a refuge. A safe place to land after one of the hardest periods in his life. When the noise outside was at its loudest, when strangers felt entitled to judge his private world, this countryside village was where he could just stop. That kind of place becomes a part of you. But it can also become a reminder. And sometimes, when you've finally healed from a chapter, you realize you can't stay in the exact spot where you picked up the pieces. Moving on isn't just about going somewhere new. It's about choosing not to live in the shadow of your own recovery. Of course, Johnny is no stranger to Europe. His history with France, his time in Italy, these aren't just vacation spots for him. They're places where he's felt at home. Places where the balance between privacy and connection works. And according to some insiders, that might be exactly what he's looking for now. A home base that keeps him close to the work he loves, the music he's pouring his soul into, and the people he trusts. Somewhere that lets him live quietly when he wants to, but also step back into the world without feeling like he's on a different planet. It's also worth remembering that Johnny has often said the spaces around us affect the way we think, create, and feel. For a long time, the Cotswolds gave him the kind of peace that let him heal and rediscover who he was outside of the spotlight. But now, with his career and creativity flowing again, maybe he's looking for a place that feeds a different kind of energy. Not the energy of retreat, but the energy of forward motion. There's a certain symbolism to it. Leaving the Cotswolds isn't about leaving a home. It's about leaving a chapter. One that served its purpose. One that will always be part of his story, but doesn't have to be part of his present. If you think about it, this is something a lot of people go through. Just not under the glare of the world's attention. Maybe you've had that one place you loved because it held you during a hard time. But then one day, you realized you were ready to go somewhere new. Not because you stopped loving it, but because you were ready to live without needing it. Johnny's decision might feel bittersweet to those who have come to picture him in that quiet little corner of the English countryside, tucked away from the chaos of Hollywood and the constant eyes of the press. For so many fans, that image of him, walking down a cobblestone lane with a scarf wrapped around his neck, maybe stopping by a local bakery, maybe sitting by the fire in a tiny pub, felt like the perfect ending to a long and exhausting chapter. It was almost cinematic in itself, like a role he was born to play after everything he had endured. But the truth is, life doesn't stay frozen in one perfect frame. People change. Seasons change. And for someone like Johnny, who has lived more lifetimes than most of us in just a few decades, change isn't just inevitable, it's necessary. He's been through storms most of us can only imagine. The highs of international fame. The lows of public battles. The years where every smile, every expression, every word was dissected and turned into headlines. And when you've lived that way for so long, the instinct to retreat, to hide away, to find somewhere that feels untouched by all that noise, it makes sense. That's what the Cotswolds gave him. It was a place where the loudest thing he heard was the wind moving through the fields. Where he could be just another face at the farmer's market, not a headline waiting to happen. But as comforting as that is, there's a danger in staying too long in a place meant for recovery. When the world stops pressing in on you, you start to heal. Slowly, you remember what it's like to laugh without thinking about who's watching. You remember what it feels like to create because you want to, not because you have to. And at some point, you realize that hiding isn't living. That if you stay too long in the place that saved you, it can also start to hold you back. That's why this move might be more than just a change of scenery. It could be the start of a new era for Johnny, one defined not by the things he's escaping from, but by the things he's moving toward. Imagine him on a new film set, in a role unlike anything he's done before. Imagine him on stage with his guitar, playing to a crowd that's singing his lyrics back to him. Imagine him in a new home somewhere far from where we expect, where every wall and every window feels like possibility instead of memory. New films aren't just another job for Johnny Depp. They're not simply about memorizing lines, hitting marks, and waiting for the director to call, cut. For him, every film is like stepping through a doorway into a completely different life. One that lets him see the world through another person's eyes. Each role is an entirely new reality where he can explore emotions, thoughts, and experiences that may have nothing to do with his own life, but somehow still speak to something deep inside him. Acting, for Johnny, has always been more than performance. It's transformation. It's curiosity. It's a chance to disappear into a character and, in doing so, discover a little more about himself. He's said in the past that the characters he plays often leave traces behind, like echoes that stay with him long after filming wraps. Playing Captain Jack Sparrow, for example, wasn't just about creating a lovable, unpredictable pirate, it was about finding the freedom to be unapologetically himself, but in a way that was wrapped in humor, charm, and madness. Taking on Edward Scissorhands wasn't only about the strange and fantastical, it was about vulnerability, loneliness, and the longing to be understood. And now, in this new phase of his career, the roles he chooses could be even more layered, because they're shaped by everything he's lived through in the last decade. After all, the most compelling performances often come from actors who have lived, really lived, in both the light and the shadows. For Johnny, the past few years have been a storm of both. The pain, the loss, the public scrutiny, those experiences don't just vanish. They become part of his emotional palette, part of what he can bring to the screen. And that's where his work now feels like freedom. It's not about running from those memories, but using them. Letting them fuel something honest and human in his performances. The same is true for his music, maybe even more so. Acting is filtered through scripts, costumes, and the vision of a director. But music, that's something else entirely. It's raw. It's unpolished in the best way. It comes directly from him, shaped by his own hands, his own voice, his own heart. There's no character to hide behind, no set to distract you. It's him, standing there with a guitar, speaking directly through sound. When he's with Hollywood vampires, the energy is different from anything he experiences in film. On a movie set, there's a slow rhythm, hours of preparation for a few minutes of footage, endless retakes, and long stretches of quiet. But on stage, it's all in the moment. The music flows, the crowd responds, and every performance is unique. There's no redoing it, no editing it later. If he misses a note, if his voice cracks, it's part of the magic. And that's what makes live music so addictive for him. It's unpredictable. It's alive. You can see it in his face when he plays, that mix of concentration and joy, like he's both fully present and somewhere far away at the same time. He's not just playing for people, he's playing with them. The crowd isn't a distant audience, they're part of the performance. They clap, they sing along, they feed the energy back to him, and he sends it right back out. It's a connection that's impossible to replicate in any other form. This connection is also deeply personal. For someone who's spent decades being filtered through the lens of the media, music offers something pure. When you're at one of his shows, there's no gossip, no headlines, no noise. Just the music. Just the moment. And maybe that's why he's leaned so heavily into it in recent years, because it's one of the few places where he gets to be completely himself without explanation. But there's also an emotional truth to music that acting can't quite match. In a film, you can spend months preparing for a role, dissecting a script, and building a character. But in music, the emotion is immediate. You can take a feeling, joy, sadness, longing, nostalgia, and turn it into sound that hits someone else instantly. No translation needed. That's why people say music speaks a universal language. And for Johnny, who has spent so much of his life expressing himself through other people's words, music is the one place where he can speak directly, with no middleman. Even the process of making music is different for him. It's collaborative in a freer way. When he's writing or rehearsing with his bandmates, it's not about hitting a perfect line or nailing a scene exactly as it's written. It's about finding a groove, experimenting, playing around with ideas until something just clicks. There's laughter, there's messing up, there's a sense of being part of a family. And for someone who's lived through some very public betrayals and losses, that sense of trust and creative safety is invaluable. It's also worth noting that music takes him places acting never could. With film, promotion is controlled, press junkets, premieres, interviews, red carpets. But with music, he can travel from city to city, from massive arenas to intimate venues, meeting fans face to face, feeling that instant human connection. One night he might be in Paris, the next in Berlin, the next in a tiny club somewhere in Eastern Europe, playing to a crowd that knows every lyric. It's a kind of freedom that keeps the road ahead unpredictable, and for someone who's built a career out of avoiding the predictable, that's priceless. This is why the next chapter of his life might lean even heavier into both of these worlds, film and music. Because together, they give him balance. Film lets him explore other lives and tell complex stories, music lets him strip everything down and share who he is without pretense. One gives him the thrill of creation within a carefully crafted world, the other gives him the rush of pure, unfiltered expression. And now, with the Cotswolds chapter closing, there's space for both to take on new meaning. Every role he accepts, every song he writes, every stage he steps onto, they're all opportunities to create something that reflects the man he is now, not the man the headlines tried to define. This isn't about making a comeback in the traditional sense. It's about moving forward into work that matters to him, in ways that matter to the people who experience it. If acting is how he explores other worlds, music is how he invites us into his own. And maybe that's why, after everything, these two paths, one on screen, one on stage, feel like more than just a career. They're lifelines. They're freedom. And most of all, they're his way of proving, to himself and to everyone else, that the story isn't over. It's just getting interesting. And then there's the unknown, the new places that will shape new stories. He's always had a love for Europe, and it wouldn't be surprising if his next chapter keeps him there. France, Italy, maybe somewhere on the Mediterranean coast. Somewhere that lets him keep that sense of privacy he's learned to value, but also puts him closer to the heart of his work and passions. He might even surprise everyone and choose somewhere unexpected, a place that feels right in ways that only make sense to him. The thing is, moving on isn't about erasing the past. The Cotswolds will always be part of his story. It will always be the place where he found peace when he needed it most. But part of honoring what a place gave you is knowing when it's time to leave. To take that peace with you and carry it into whatever comes next. Some people will see this as sad, a man leaving behind the sanctuary he built for himself. But others will see it for what it is, growth. The willingness to step forward, even when it's easier to stay still. The courage to open the door, walk out into the unknown, and trust that the next chapter can be just as beautiful, even if it looks completely different. For someone who's been defined for so long by battles, controversies, and comebacks, this feels like a different kind of turning point. Not a fight to win back something that was lost, but a choice to build something new from the ground up. And that might be the most powerful move of all. Because here's the truth, when you're no longer running from the past, you can start running toward the future. And the future for Johnny Depp looks like it's going to be filled with creativity, connection, and stories we haven't even begun to imagine yet. If you picture him now, don't see him walking away from something. See him walking toward it, toward the light, toward the work, toward the music, toward whatever and whoever makes him feel alive again. That's not an ending. That's a beginning. And maybe, just maybe, that's what makes this bittersweet moment so important. It's a reminder that no matter how comfortable or safe a chapter feels, the real magic happens when you turn the page. And Johnny? He's turning the page with both hands. And maybe that's the real point here, this isn't about losing a dream life. It's about making space for the next one. So maybe the question isn't, why is Johnny Depp leaving? Maybe the real question is, where is Johnny Depp going next? And honestly, knowing his history, it could be anywhere. A vineyard in France. A seaside town in Spain. A hidden retreat in the mountains. Or maybe even somewhere completely unexpected. Whatever it is, it will probably be a place that feels right for who he is now, not who he was when he arrived in the Cotswolds. It's a reminder that no matter how peaceful or perfect something might seem from the outside, life is about timing. About knowing when to stay, and when to go. And if there's one thing Johnny Depp has shown over the years, it's that he lives on his own terms, even if it means leaving behind a place the rest of us might dream of forever. Which leaves us with a question only you can answer, if you had a chance to live that dream life in the Cotswolds, would you ever walk away? Or would you stay, no matter what? Because sometimes, walking away isn't about giving up. It's about stepping into whatever comes next. And for Johnny, it feels like, next, might be the most interesting chapter yet.